Hey guys, it's UK here. It's 1:30 in the morning at the moment, and I'm in one of those moods where I just can't sleep, and don't want to sleep. So I'm just going to do a random vid of something to do, and hopefully it'll put me in the mind to, it's probably not going to be of interest to most of you, so I'm not going to feel offended if people don't watch it or whatever. But basically, over the last couple of weeks, as some of you may know, I've been playing the Star Trek Clicks that's just come out from WizKids Games, and I've always been a fan of Star Trek, as far back as I can remember, and over the last couple of years I've actually been re-watching a lot of it, and it's just something to ponder. I'm just going to run through it all. The original series, I used to love it when I was in my teens. It got shown all over the place, but I really remember it going out on like a Wednesday evening, and homework got pushed to one side, and I used to watch it. I used to love it, and it made me go out and buy the original FASA Star Trek RPG. And as I say, I used to really, really like it. I mean, I've got to be honest, Kirk is probably my favourite captain. He's just so cool. Bare chest, gets the girls, not afraid of a fist fight. It's my sort of captain. And over the last couple of years, they have been showing on the cable channels the remastered original series, and basically someone has gone back over the show and they've upped some of the effects. So the starships look better. They've redone the phasers, the photon torpedoes, the transporters, the hand phasers, and they've kind of made it halfway decent between what they had then and what we have now. And I've enjoyed rewatching it, but when you look back at it now, it's absolutely awful. I kind of wonder at some points how it actually managed to do what it did at the time and kind of spark people's imaginations, and it does a good job of trying to promote the ideals that Gene Roddenberry was trying to do, a cooperative, peaceful future, but you can obviously see there was no budget. They had to borrow clothes and ideas from other shows. Obviously you got your mobsters, you got your Nazi Germany planet, and so on. Which is nice in kind of a cheesy sort of way. But I just think now, it's coming up to 50 years. It was late 60s, wasn't it? So we're coming up to 50 years. But I don't know. I find it hard going now. They only did I think it was 3 seasons, and there's probably less than 1 season's worth of episodes I actually like from the original series. But without that, we wouldn't have, I don't think, a lot of classic sci-fi today. Moving on then, it gets cancelled, and we then get the movie era, or the original series movie era. Motion picture. Who thought that was a good idea? I appreciate, you can't use the same TV style appearance for the clothes and everything else, but it just looks like they're walking around in pyjamas. And the effects were alright for the time, I suppose, but the story's dull as anything. There is this joke that I'm sure if you're a Trek fan you know of, that the even number films are good and the odd numbered ones aren't, and it kind of starts that curse here, really does. I've got the director's cut DVD, and I watched it only a little while back, and I really just couldn't get into it. But it brought Star Trek back. So Star Trek 2, Wrath Khan. Now we get into it. Now I recently picked this up on DVD. I hadn't owned it for a long time. When I did, it was on VHS, and I recently picked it up on DVD, the director's cut again. And now this, to me, was what we should have had for like the first film. This is kind of the level that we wanted, or at least I wanted anyway. You've got something from the original show that you bring back, in this case Khan. you've got a ship battle. I'm sorry, I know Star Trek is more than just ships and what have you, but space sci-fi. If it didn't have starship battles, you'd probably be bored through most of it. And I love this one. I'm watching the commentary on the DVD. The director talks about, and I hadn't spotted this, but basically he changes it because he tried to make it more like the running of a naval vessel, whereas before it's kind of, and after to be fair, it's all very, what's the word? Everybody's rather pally. You've got your chain of command, you've got your discipline, and what have you, but everyone's like friendly, and everyone chats and laughs and what have you. With this, he toned that down and he makes it more like the running of a ship. In fact, he even goes so far to say that he tried to do the ship combat as naval, as submarine warfare, and he's right. And it makes the film, I think that's what makes that film. There's that tweak that makes it a bit more realistic. Star Trek 3. Oh, another absolutely pants one. I remember as a kid really liking this film, and now I can barely watch it without cringing. The second one seems to have a really good budget and really good story, and then they just kind of kill it in this. The budget just doesn't seem to hold up, and for some reason they get I've forgotten his name now. The guy that played Emmett Brown in Back to the Future, I forget his name, but he's a comedic actor, and they get him to play a Klingon. Oh dear. And then we move on to 4. I'm not going to dwell on 3. Then we move on to 4, Voyage Home. Far too nicey really, but it's designed as a comedy to kind of lower what you've had before, and it works alright. I do enjoy that one. Star Trek 5, probably the worst of the original series ones. I think it's even worse than motion picture. It was actually the first one I went to see at the cinema, and I remember again really enjoying it at the time, but every time I've watched it ever since, it's just like, why? Which is a shame. I just kind of wonder whether they didn't know what to do with the original series stuff at this point, but it just doesn't go anywhere. And then where do we get to? Undiscovered Country. See, this is another that I find really odd. I'm kind of slagging these films off, and I don't mean to, because I do enjoy them for the most part. But this one again just seems really cheap and nasty. Maybe it's just the way they filmed it. I don't know, but I can't describe it. It's a good film. It kind of plays into the old stuff with the Cold War between the Klingons and the Federation, and it kind of sets itself up as a pre-runner to the Next Generation, even though it comes after. It comes a good way through the Next Generation's run, because you have Kittimer, which is obviously a major part in the backstory for Next Gen, and so on. And you've got the beginning of the alliance between the Federation and the Klingons, that they're going to eventually come together as allies. But I don't know, it just looks wrong in places. I mean, the whole there's a dinner scene where the crew of the Enterprise sit down for dinner with the Klingons, and I remember a making of documentary, and at one point you've got William Shatner going over what's on the dinner plate. And one of the things is, there's like a strange blue flower, and there's a whale, and he's got like a rubber fish looking thing, and it's just like, no one bothered, did they, on this film? Anyway, I don't dislike the films before people start thinking I do. Then you get Next Generation, and the Next Gen era has to be, where it's at. I don't want to put down the original series stuff, but the Next Gen look, Next Gen DS9 Voyager, is just my idea of where Star Trek is. I kind of wonder whether, had they done the original series sort of like now and could use these sort of effects, whether it would have been better. But I like Next Gen. We didn't get it over here in the UK until I mean, it had been running in America for about 3 years, I think, before we got it. When did it start? 87, something like that. We got it in about 90. I remember I'd left school by the time we got it. Interesting mix of characters. What I originally thought was a weird looking design for the Enterprise. And I've been... Again, I didn't get very far with it, but I started watching the Next Gen from the very beginning. And I hadn't noticed before, but they've tried, at least in the first sort of like half of the run, to try and emulate the 60s sort of look. Things that are kind of a pastel shade, which I hadn't noticed before. And a lot of it still feels like they've had to borrow costumes and sets from other programs or other shows. And as it goes on, it kind of loses that, which I think is a good thing. I was never one of those people who dislike Wesley Crusher either, I'll point out. I know a lot of people dislike Will Wheaton and playing Wesley Crusher, but I don't get it. The Next Gen films, the only one I actually like is First Contact. First Contact actually feels like they've tried to make a film for the Next Generation crew. The other films all feel like they've tried to take an episode and stretch it out over 2 hours, and they fail. In fact, the last one, Nemesis, just kind of ends. Doesn't actually feel like it goes anywhere. Yeah, I kind of want another half hour or so added on to the end of that film. First Contact is definitely my favourite. Now, Deep Space Nine started up towards the end of Next Gen's run, and I've been a big fan of Babylon 5, still am, and so the idea of another series but set on a space station really kind of piqued my interest. And I will say that Deep Space Nine is my favourite of all the Star Trek shows. What I like about it more than any of the others is it, I find it realistic. Original series, Next Gen, Voyager, and even to an extent Enterprise, all feel far too nicey-nicey. The Federation can do no wrong. The Federation's good. We're lovely. We don't do naughty things. And yet, when you get into Deep Space Nine, you're thrust out into the frontier, and Captain Sisko has to do things that you wouldn't get Kirk or Picard doing. I mean, the show's been over for a number of years. I'm going to say some stuff that might be a spoiler, so if you haven't watched it, turn off now. But he's got things where he has to assassinate a member of the Romulan government, I believe it is, or the Tal Shiar, I forget which, in order to force the Romulans into the war on the side of the Alpha Quadrant against the Dominion. Picard would never have done that. You get to see the Federation fight a war. And let's be fair, wars are pretty horrific things in the real world. And they do it properly on DS9. You see, there's death and there's mayhem and there's people are injured. It just, it's a much darker show once it gets going, and it just fulfills what I kind of like out of sci-fi. There's a lot more action to it as well. I like my science fiction with action in it. I like ship battles. I like just action really. Star Trek can be very cerebral at times. Trying to do the whole human condition, and I mean, good sci-fi should make you think. It shouldn't just be something that you sit and watch, and after it's done you just put it away. You should have to think. Then we have Voyager. Now, Voyager's an odd one because a lot of people don't like Voyager, and I think it started off really, really well. I think it was a very clever idea, but I wonder whether the writers actually thought about it before they actually started putting pen to paper, because it builds, and then it kind of loses its way about halfway through its run, through about year 4, 5. I think it only really starts to come back when they bring the Borg back into it. Now, I'm going to touch on the Borg a little bit here. The Borg are my favourite of all the villains in Star Trek. They when they first turn up, I forget which Q episode it is. They're quite scary. Then they turn up in Best of Both Worlds, and wow, suddenly we've got this real threat to the Federation. When they turn up again in the Next Generation, they've kind of humanised them. You've got Iborg, and then I can't think of the episode where Lore, Data's brother, has taken over what remains of the collective of the ship that Hugh was sent back to. And it's just it's kind of like you ran out of ideas, writers, and you just completely humanised and taken the threat away. We don't get them in DS9, obviously. First Contact, awesome. The Borg are back to what they originally were. And I think that when they introduced the Borg again in Voyager, they were back to being that threat. I don't think at any point in Voyager do you feel that the Borg aren't what they originally appeared in Star Trek. I mean, you do have the stuff with 7-9, and you do have pardon me, you do have the kids that they liberate from the collective, and what have you. But the Borg themselves remain this huge threat. So I think once they hit Borg space in Voyager, it just rises back up, and it got better. It's just a shame that the very end of the series seems rushed somehow. You want to know what happened. Well, at least I did anyway. I want to know what happened to the crew once they get back to Earth. I mean, I love the finale of DS9. It almost makes me cry somewhat because you see what happens to everybody. Cisco's gone off, and everybody else kind of says their goodbyes and departs, and it's quite moving. You know what happens to them. In Voyager, they're just like they're home, sorted, mum. I want to know what happens to everybody else. The Doctor, Seven, what have you. What happens to the Marquis on board and so on. But I liked Voyager. There was a really odd thing I do find with Voyager. One, it feels like it goes back in places to the original series, like I was saying, to the start of Next Gen. There's a lot of stuff that feels like it came out of the 60s original series. There's one episode with like a holographic clown or something, and weird costumes. But the one thing that really annoys me with Voyager isn't the show itself. It's actually that the Delta Quadrant feels so primitive. You watch Enterprise and we feel primitive, but there's very little going on in the Alpha Quadrant at this point. It's tiny, the Federation has hardly expanded, and the people they're running into are only a little bit more advanced than we are, sort of thing, really, bar the Vulcans. Then when you get to like the Next Gen era, we've expanded and everything feels technologically advanced. Everyone we encounter feels technologically advanced. There's a reason they're in space. When you get to DS9, when we get to the Gamma Quadrant, there is a hint of a primitive corner of the galaxy, but everybody that means anything out there, the Dominion, the Karama, or whoever, all feel like they've been around a while, they've got technology. It's an advanced outer corner of space. You get to Voyager and the Delta Quadrant, and suddenly it all just feels like this is the corner of the galaxy that technology forgot. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but then you get Enterprise. Now, I recently watched Enterprise. I'd only ever seen the first season. First two seasons, I really like. Is it the first two seasons? Yeah, first two seasons I really like. Then you get that stupid what's the word I'm looking for? I'm just going to call it a tweak. Where they had the Xindi attack on Earth. Sorry, you can't do that. Something of that magnitude would have been mentioned before. Now, okay, this is a prequel that's been made afterwards, but you don't invent something for the hell of it. You could have come up with something else. But other than that, I did really like Enterprise. I liked the characters, I liked their interactions, I liked how you saw how the Federation was building from the actions of Captain Archer and his crew. It just suffered again, same as Voyager, where the ending was just kind of there, bum bum. In fact, the ending of Enterprise is really disappointing because it's not really them. You're looking. I'm going to spoil it again, I'm afraid. So if you don't know the end of Enterprise and you're going to watch it at some point and don't get spoiled, turn off now. But it's Riker and Troy during the events of the Pegasus storyline in Next Gen, and they're it's kind of been shoehorned in that they're reviewing how Archer did things so that Riker can make his decision. And it just feels like you've just shoehorned everybody from the show out to make, to just end it. And then we get the new film. Pardon me, you have to forgive me, I should have mentioned at the beginning, but I've got a bit of a cold still. So if I sound a bit nasally, that's why. You get the new film, and I liked the new film, I enjoyed it. I really wish they hadn't done what they did with it. I'm afraid creating a whole new timeline just means you've just screwed over the last 40 odd years worth of Star Trek. I don't. You've got a perfectly good universe. Let's run with it. I know the argument that people say is, well, what can you do now? You had the Enterprise exploring space. You've had the DS9 in a war. You've had Voyager out in the middle of nowhere. What's next? I'm sure you could come up with something other than a reset. It's disappointing. Very disappointing. It looks good. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a good fun film. I just didn't like the reset. But hey, that's just me. Okay, I've waffled on for over 20 minutes now. General nothingness. I just threw this out there because I was not sleeping, and Star Trek has been on my mind a lot lately. So if you watch this and you want to throw some comments, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me what your favourite show is, any of this stuff, favourite characters. Go for it. Hopefully I'm going to use this now as I am beginning to feel tired. So I'll check in the morning, and if you've got anything, post it. Until later, live long and prosper. Good night.